Unfortunately, there's more to communicating than just listening. We also communicate a lot of meaning with our actions, our physical postures, our gestures, our facial expressions. In fact, most people can lie with their words, but are unable to do that with their physicalities. We've all had a friend say, "I'm fine," and gaze at us through puffy, sad eyes. The lips say fine, but the face says anything but. Consequently, when communicating face to face, we need to not only listen intently to the words, but we also need to be very observant. What is the other person's physical demeanor saying to you? Sometimes this can help you diffuse a hostile situation before it fully develops. If you notice someone is beginning to look defensive or angry, you can respond before the anger actually expresses itself in words. In addition, sometimes physical demeanor can tell you when something has changed. If you notice that a parent's physicalities have drastically changed over a period of time, if they look sad or frazzled now when they never did before, it may indicate that something is going on at home, and this something will probably affect the child eventually. If you notice these things early, sometimes you can deal with the situation before it becomes a major issue. Others read our physical demeanor as well, so daycare professionals need to keep this in mind at all times. When someone is speaking to you in person, adopting a proper listening physicality will help you to communicate that you care. In a proper listening physicality, keep eye contact, adopt a friendly posture, and make sure your facial expressions are warm and inviting. If you are having a bad day, make an effort not to let it show in your physical demeanor. Keep in mind that you care about the child and hold that thought in your head. This will better allow you to keep your physical responses helpful and appropriate. Questioning can be another valuable skill to use in communication. As I mentioned earlier, questions can help you clarify information about which you are unsure. You can also inquire about behavioral issues and other changes you've noticed in a child. In addition, questions can help you gain information that hasn't been offered up freely. A word of caution, however. Asking pointed questions or asking too many questions can be interpreted as intrusive and unsympathetic. Be careful not to interrogate and word your questions very carefully. In fact, word choice is always important. In order to be effective, communication needs to be clear and concise. This is especially important in a daycare setting. Both the childcare and educational industries use lots of jargon, abbreviations, and acronyms to communicate with one another, and we need to make sure that we either define or translate these terms into everyday language when we communicate with people outside our profession. Jargon is the name given to all the words and phrases that have special meaning within a specific industry, but don't mean the same thing to the rest of the world. And industries involved with the care and education of children seem to have a vast amount of jargon. Sayings like best practice, instructional strategies, learning standards, benchmarks, evidence-based, and assessment mean something to us, but to others they can be very confusing. In addition, if a child care worker uses too much jargon when speaking to a parent, it may very well put up a wall and cause parents to become defensive. Always keep in mind that we are all on the same team, so we need to use words that convey meaning to everyone involved. The childcare industry also contains a lot of abbreviations and acronyms. Abbreviations and acronyms use the first letters of the words in a saying or a name. These letters can either form an abbreviation, such as DCF, Department of Children and Family Services, and IEP, Individualized Education Plan, or an acronym in which those letters are used to create a completely new word, such as SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. Just as with jargon, we need to be careful about using abbreviations and acronyms in conversations with people who are not fellow childcare professionals. Remember, in order for communication to be successful, Both parties have to have the same understanding of the information being communicated. If we use a lot of acronyms, abbreviations, and jargon, there's a good possibility that the meaning of what we are saying will not be understood. During all of your conversations, keep one important rule in mind. Manners count. Again, word choice matters a lot. Choose words that convey your meaning, yet do it in a pleasant and professional manner. Also, saying please and thank you can go a long way to keeping the lines of communication open. Another phrase to remember is, I'm sorry. We all make mistakes. If you make one, apologize for it. In fact, the apology doesn't even need to be for something you have done. It can be an apology that doesn't lay blame on anyone. For example, a statement like, I'm afraid there's been a miscommunication. I'm really sorry about that, can be very successful. It lays no blame. It admits no fault, yet it can effectively diffuse a tense situation because it shows the other person that you care. Make sure that your actions are also courteous, specifically when it comes to response time. If parents contact you, do them the courtesy of responding quickly. If you can handle their questions or address their issues swiftly, then do so. If the issue requires more time, then respond back and let them know this. Most people will be more than willing to give you the time you need to find the answers you seek if you take just a few moments to let them know the situation. In addition, it's important to be conscious of how you communicate about sensitive issues. If something is private, then you need to communicate about it privately. It may be easier on you to talk about something at pickup or drop-off time when many other parents are around, but it may not be the right time. Take the topic into consideration and be courteous when choosing when you communicate. Word choice is especially important when corresponding in writing because once something is written down, there's a permanent record of what you have said. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be writing. Quite the contrary. Writing is a very effective way to communicate, especially with large groups of people, or in situations where a written record of the correspondence is needed, as long as it is accurate, professional, and error-free, and the writer keeps in mind that his or her thoughts have now become like a public record, available for anyone to read and reread. In today's society, email has become a preferred method of communication by many people, including many childcare professionals. Anyone who works with children will tell you that they have very little free time during their workday to talk on the phone. Most of their time and attention is directed towards the care and education of children. Consequently, many of them rely on email rather than phone conversations. Email can be used very effectively in many situations. It's great for quick updates and easy questions. Information can be sent on swiftly whenever the writer has only a few free moments to spare. However, email should be used with caution. First, people tend to be very casual about their language and expressions when emailing one another. When emailing parents or guardians, this is not appropriate. Your email still needs to sound professional. Second, all of the face-to-face elements of communication, such as vocal tone, physical posture, and gestures, are missing from written correspondence. As we learned earlier, these personal attributes communicate a lot of information, and without them, there is a greater chance that the message being sent may be misinterpreted. Consequently, written communication should be saved for simple, straightforward information. Finally, keep records of your contacts. Most childcare workers have several children in their charge, and consequently have to work on many different relationships at once. If your correspondence has been in writing, then you have a written record of what has happened. If your communication was verbal, however, it is a good idea to make notes of what transpired. The question most childcare professionals ask at this point is, do I have to write down everything? The answer is no. It's best to write down the important things. So, what's important? If things are routine, then there's no need to make note of them. If something out of the ordinary arises, then you may want to write it down. If there's ever a question as to whether you should write it down or not, My advice is to write it down. It's better write down too much than not enough. At the time something happens, you may think that you'll remember what happened and what you said. But the reality is that memory can be unreliable. It's more effective to jot down notes at the time of the communication and keep track of all contacts. This will help the long-term communication process.